This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and on this episode, we are talking Mother's Day. How did mothers get one day a year anyway? Why is Mother's Day celebrated in different days in different countries? We'll look at the origin of Mother's Day, hear from listeners and past guests who share stories of their own moms or mom-like creatures. And I'll spend some time riffing on being a mom, on having had a mom, and now moving into the world as kind of a wise woman. So for those of you who have asked for less guests, well, this episode is for you. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and this is this special one-off Mother's Day episode. It's also our 26th episode, which is a special one for me because looking back, this podcast has really been about sharing women's wisdom. And for most of us, the first woman we know or knew, the woman who taught us those early lessons, was our mother. And I recognize that not everyone has a mom on this plane at this point. Maybe not everyone had a great relationship with their mother. But the bottom line is we all come from mothers. And in another time, being a mother was akin to being a goddess. And you can see it in, ancient archaeological sites. So it's kind of crazy to think that today in this world, moms get a day, a card, a brunch, and then, it's back to business as normal for the adult children. Have you ever wondered about the origins of the modern Mother's Day? Me too. Okay, here's what I found out. I'm going to be reading. It's a little bit of a lecture, but I was surprised to find this out. Okay, I live in Calgary, Canada. Mother's Day here is celebrated on the second Sunday of May, and that's also when Mother's Day is celebrated in many countries, including Australia, Italy, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Turkey, and the United States. And it turns out this version of Mother's Day, the second Sunday in May, is, originated in the United States. And yes, Mother's Day was conceived by a woman. All right, here's what I found out. In 1870, Julia Ward Howe was an abolitionist, a women's rights activist, a peace activist, and she was horrified by the death and destruction she'd witnessed during the American Civil War. And she was thinking there was more war on a global level on the horizon, and guess what? She was right. So in an effort to put an end to war, she sought to bring together a coalition of women and called for the coalition of a Mother's Peace Day. This was not a thank you card moment. This was a political movement that she was conceiving. And she meant to harness the untapped energy of women who instinctively knew they would be against war. So she was trying to harness the political power of mothers. Howe was a poet, and her version of Mother's Day was meant as an appeal to womanhood throughout the world. She wanted to create this international body of women who could find ways to avoid war and bloodshed. And this was a very real alternative to what was happening in real life. Lots of war, lots of bloodshed. Howe issued what has come to be known as her Mother's Day Proclamation. And here's a bit from that, which I think of as a Mother's Day manifesto, written by Howe in 1870. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses or applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, of mercy, of patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up, and our own. It says, disarm. Disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. It's pretty powerful and modern and timeless. And Mother's Day began with a manifesto. Anyway, guess what? The international coalition that Howe envisioned did not happen. So Howe changed her tactics and advocated instead for an annual Mother's Day for Peace, which was to be celebrated in June. And in some places in the United States, and for a while it was, but eventually it faded out. The Mother's Day celebration we know today was seeded by another American woman, Anna Jarvis, to honor her mother, also called Anna Jarvis. And interestingly enough, it was also in reaction to the horror these women witnessed, the horror of the American Civil War. So let's talk about Anna Jarvis Sr. Anna Marie Jarvis gave birth to 12 children. Most of them died from diseases such as diphtheria or measles, which were common in the Appalachia area of the United States, now West Virginia, where she lived and raised her children. Jarvis, like all mothers everywhere, wanted to make a better life for her children. She supported other mothers and families in her community and grew into a reformer. She organized, as part of this movement, mothers' work clubs, where women came together to help each other with day-to-day chores, and also paid attention to things like cleanliness and sanitation. So together, they were making their communities stronger. She also organized something called Mothers' Work Days, when women would collaboratively collect trash and undertake projects to improve environmental conditions in their neighborhood, with the understanding that if we come together, we're going to build stronger, cleaner, healthier communities. And guess what? She made the community stronger. So when the Civil War happened, it pitted, and especially in this area of the United States, in what is now West Virginia, it pitted neighbors against neighbors, so families against families, sons against sons. Anna Jarvis could not bear this. So she organized women to help all the soldiers, whether they were Confederate or Union, who were sick or wounded. This, at the time, and it is a pun, but it was revolutionary. And she also worked to promote peace and understanding after the war was over, which was dangerous. There's a lot of leftover horrible feelings. In 1868, despite threats of violence, she organized a Mother's Friendship Day, bringing families from both sides of the war together to try and redevelop and revive this sense of community that meant so much to her. And although it's not documented, and this is kind of interesting, it's possible that Howe's proclamation, that manifesto I shared with you a little while ago, was actually inspired in part by Jarvis. The two knew each other, and at the very least, Jarvis and Howe shared the belief that women, and especially mothers, were best suited to bring people together in the cause of peace. After Anna Jarvis's death, her daughter, Anna Jarvis, set out to honor her mother's legacy by establishing a National Mother's Day on the second Sunday of May every year. That was the day her mother had died, actually. And she wanted to honor not just her mother, but all mothers and the work of women. Anna Jarvis Jr., very much like her mother, was dedicated to the cause. And in 1914, American President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed Mother's Day as a national holiday and a public expression of our love and reverence for all mothers. So it is that Mother's Day became celebrated on the second Sunday in May, beginning in 1914. And it's also ironic that that very first Mother's Day was celebrated just before the beginning of the Second World War. So Anna, the daughter, Anna Jarvis, who never married or had children of her own, did not focus her version of Mother's Day on peace activism per se, but more on the honoring of her own mother and the work done by women. She intended Mother's Day to be almost a holy day, in her words. And what Mother's Day evolved into ended up displeasing her greatly. She saw it becoming more commercialized, hollow, lacking that initial reverence that she had hoped would follow the declaration of Mother's Day. And in 1943, Anna Jarvis actually petitioned to have Mother's Day recalled, but she failed. And 5 years later, and this is sad, in 1948, Anna Jarvis died penniless in a sanitarium. So that's the history of Mother's Day in the United States. And in 1914, Mother's Day was also adopted in Canada. So that became kind of the norm for North America and all the other countries I mentioned at the beginning of the show. We'll be back in a moment to talk about Mother's Day and how it's celebrated in other countries, and hear from some Secret Heart listeners and past guests about their relationship with their moms. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing on Secret Heart Broadcasting, please follow us on YouTube or like. Your support means the world. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and this is the Mother's Day episode. We've just outlined the history of Mother's Day in the United States, which eventually seeded Mother's Days all over North America and in many countries that we outlined at the top of the show. But I think it's really interesting to remember that Mother's Day was conceived as a holiday, not a holiday, as a political movement to bring women together to end war. So, that was interesting. In the UK, it's a little bit different. In the UK, what is called Mother's Day is based on the older tradition of Mothering Sunday. And that goes back to the Middle Ages when workers had the opportunity to return home to their mother's church. So that would be your diocese, your local diocese, on the fourth Sunday of Lent. And that's the church where typically they were baptized or married. It was also the church where typically their family lived. So while making the visit, many people they'd moved away to work. They were able to reconnect with their families, including their mothers. And that created this kind of tradition of a day of reunion. So in the UK, Mother's Day is celebrated annually. It still is, but it doesn't fall on the same day each year the way it does in many other countries. And that's because the centuries-old Christian calendar is built around Easter, which is a lunar calendar, and Lent is the fourth Sunday, or the Lent fourth Sunday is Mothering Sunday. It's a lunar holiday, so it doesn't always fall on the same day. So as the lunar calendar changes, so does the day of Mother's Day in the UK. And here are some other Mother's Day traditions in other countries. This will just be brief. In Ethiopia, mothers are celebrated during a holiday called Anstrot. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's a 3-day festival, and it's held typically at the end of the rainy season in early autumn. In Japan, Mother's Day was originally celebrated on the 6th of March. This was the birthday of the old Empress Kojan. However, in 1949, after the end of the Second World War, Mother's Day in Japan was changed to the American second Sunday in May. In Mexico, the Dia de las Madres is celebrated on May 10th. And this is a really big deal. I mean, Mexico is a more matriarchal culture, and families get together, big families get together to celebrate. This is an all-out party, and mothers are revered. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting, the Mother's Day edition, and I'm so very pleased to have Pablo Gee here speaking a little bit about his mom. Over to you, Pablo.
Hi, Carrie. Yeah, well, what can't I say about my mom? When we were growing up, my dad unfortunately had to leave to Canada to find a better job. And so all the responsibility went over to my mom. There were a lot of things that she taught me during that period. One of them was, well, first, self-care. While there's a lot of chaos around you, it's really, really hard to have 3 kids, to have a household to run. She also used to take care of her dad, my granddad. So she would always take a little bit of time in the morning to take care of herself. She taught me a lot about strength. Ever since I was a kid, she would always stand up for me like a lioness. I remember this one time we were at a market and I was looking at a toy, and she just allowed me to go see the toys. And the guy at the stand said, "If you're not going to buy anything, just go away." And before he even finished that sentence, my mom had stepped in to defend me and say, "Hey, you know this kid, he shopped here before. If you're going to be a bum like that, then we're not going to shop with you anymore." Obviously, I said it in much nicer words and at a much calmer tone, but ever since then, she stepped up for me. I remember in elementary, I had a bit of an altercation with a teacher. She had no second guessing. She had no time to even think, is my kid in the right or is he in the wrong? Obviously, I was in the right, but she stepped in. She defended me. She took care of me. She protected me. And I think I've took that lesson and applied it in many, many areas of my life. Anytime I see anyone being treated unfairly, I just remember my mom, and it just kind of kicks in. And yeah, I like to protect people because of my mom.
So first of all, your mom was fierce,
Mhm.
sounds like. And do you want to talk a little bit about Mother's Day in Mexico and how that's different from, kind of Canadian US Mother's Day?
Yeah, so Mother's Day in Mexico, I would say, is treated like a big deal. Anything you say about the mom is quite important. So yeah, even if it's in the middle of the week, you're gonna have a big party. Whereas here, I notice it's more you do get to spend time with your mom, but it's not so much a celebration in a grand way. It's more of let's get together, let's spend time, let's make dinner, let's have dinner. Yeah, I would say, yeah, just like any other Mexican holidays, just a big party.
Do you prefer, like, if you had to compare the two, Mother's Day Mexico, May 10th, Mother's Day Canada, US, the second Sunday in May, is there a celebration you prefer?
I definitely prefer the Mexican style. Just having, I mean, I remember when my grandma was around, my mom's mom, we would get together and it would be probably around 150 of us. So then it would be a massive celebration of not just the grandma of the house or the matriarch of the house, but everyone else. So then you would have catering, you would have live music, you would have sometimes piñatas. I don't know why. Those tend to be more for the kids, but uh, yeah, yeah, just more of a grand celebration, more of a this is how much it means to us.
So there are many different origin stories for Mother's Day, or what we currently think of as Mother's Day, from a call for women internationally to unify and work toward world peace, to a grieving childless daughter honoring her activist mother, to the tradition at Easter time of bringing people home to their parishes, and to really revering women in matriarchal cultures. It's not a one-size-fits-all holiday. There's many ways to honor the mother, which brings me to the question, what does it mean to be a mother at all? The poet Mary Oliver wasn't a mother, but through her extraordinary poems and prose, she shares what it is to provide wisdom to her readers and also unconditional love. I'm going to quote a couple of poems here from Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let that soft animal of your body love what it loves. Or that gorgeous line from the much quoted The Summer Day, again from Mary Oliver. This last line, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Oliver reminds us it's enough to be alive, and what you do with your life is up to you. To me, those are the words of a mother. My friend Barb doesn't have biological children of her own, yet her niece experiences the full love of a mother. Barb shines her light bright. And when I was pregnant with my own daughter, I felt the loving embrace of Diane Federation, who was there when I needed her at a time where my mother couldn't be, and I will always remember her kindness. And now I'm a mother. And during this life, I was able to heal the relationship with my own mother. So I cannot underestimate the power of that, and that in forgiveness, there is great healing. And what's possible in the future if we can forgive what exists today. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny. Karen Pickles, guest on season 1, is here to talk a little bit about her mom this Mother's Day.
I have a lot of empathy for the experiences of mothers, myself being a mom, and knowing that deep sense of inadequacy that comes when I'm aware that I fall short of the norms imposed by modern society, the ideals of what a mother should be. So I was considering cocktails for some strange reason today, and perhaps that's to raise a glass to mothers on Mother's Day. But this cocktail would be a mom teeny. It would be 1 part dopamine, 1 part cortisol, and 1 part oxytocin. Shaken, not stirred. Maybe a pierogi for a garnish for my mom. And as I raise this glass to my lips and reflect about my mother, I'm aware of one solid truth, that even in the most challenging times, when we're experiencing a disconnect, a relational rupture of some sort, which seems to be often even this late in life, I always feel held by my mother. She is like gravity. She's like the earth itself. It's an invisible energy that's always active. And the same goes with my own children. They are continually in my heart consciousness. And I can hold their experience more fully when I can also hold my own with the same empathy. That even in the face of my failure to show up perfectly for them, that I have been adequate. I've done the very best I could with my circumstances. And I cherish those times when my mom and I have been able to drop our defenses and experience the kind of tenderness that is seen in my photo with her, those micro moments of deep connection. They're rare. Maybe it's not the big grand prize moms are looking for or the one that we deserve as mothers, but I want my mom to know that she is adequate and that I'm grateful to have her as my mom.
This is the Secret Heart Broadcasting Mother's Day episode of kind of freestyling this episode. Normally I have a guest and we have a topic and we speak about life and the expertise of that guest and share what women know with the wider world. So thank you so much for listening and supporting this gift of a podcast. And hopefully you like what you're hearing. This episode is a little bit different because Mother's Day is really it's the crux of Women's Wisdom Day, I think. And I wanted to share what I have learned from my mother, my grandmother, what I've learned by being a mother, what a great gift in my life. And also share your stories about your mothers or being a mother and what you know about being a wise woman in the world. So thank you. I am writing a memoir about the time of my mother's decline, my daughter's coming of age, and my own becoming an elder, which was not an easy path. There is no map to become an elder. And honestly, who wants to be when you can be a child forever? Which is what our mothers on earth provide us, right? We're always her child, whether we have a good relationship or not. Once they're gone, you're, as my friend Jennifer says, you're next in line on the buffalo jump and you can see over the precipice. And that's where I found myself during that time. My mother and I, later in life, had a wonderful relationship, very honest, deep, and loving. And I am so grateful that I was in a position to be both in the same city as she was, to be mature enough to have compassion for my mother, and that she chose to really kind of drop the masks and be honest with me. And she really needed me in the same way that in my life I have needed her, but it wasn't always that way. So I do want to say that growing up, like many people, my childhood felt a little bit insufficient. I had a very gregarious, unpredictable father who wrestled with addiction issues, and a very kind, quiet mother who really held the family together. So while that was a wonderful gift to me as a child, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of my siblings, but for me, she was the soul and the heart and the sanity in our house when I was growing up. And she fed us healthy food. She grew a garden that fed us. She could, she was one of those people who could, make dinner from 25 cents. So she really kept it together. And it inherited a lot of that fortitude and thriftiness and wisdom from her mother. But I don't want to get into that now. What I want to talk about, though, is that time as a teenager when I did not really understand my mother's choice to stay in this marriage. And I did not really understand her need to give so much to other people at what seemed to me the cost of losing herself. So there were years in there when I was really angry at my mom, and I didn't have a lot of compassion. And I moved away as soon as I turned 18, which in the country I live in is when you can be on your own and be an adult. And I traveled. I want to say lived fast. I was always reasonable, but I lived far away at times. I was not always in touch with her. I made decisions that were questionable, and I was mad at my mom for a long time. And it wasn't until I had my daughter, and I had my daughter later in life. I was 37, I think. And things had happened in my life where I was open to needing my mother's care and love and soup. And there was just this beautiful opening. And again, this happens around, I think, death and birth. And certainly when I was pregnant with my daughter and immediately after she was born, my mother was there for me in a way that had been impossible for her to be when I was young. My father was long dead by this time. And I was open enough where the fight was out of me and I really needed her help. And that just created a beautiful opening in our relationship. I would say my daughter, was an amazing gift and miracle, healing my mother, allowing her to be grandmother again, allowing me to have compassion for mother and to become a mother and to really understand what that must have been like for my mom when her children were young. So people have asked me, hey, weren't you always really close with your mom? And the answer is no. But was I close later on in her life? And did she teach me so much? And did my daughter have a wonderful grandmother? Yeah, that answer is yes. So I guess there's just a bit about how life can change. And I'm wondering if that's true for most people. I don't know. I'm a control group of one. I had one mother and one daughter. But yeah, there's just a real gift in the mother I had and the daughter I had. And they both taught me so much about what it is to move into this new role of being a wise woman. This is our Mother's Day episode, and Sandra Sawatzky, a guest from season 1, is here to talk a bit about her mother. Take it away, Sandra.
Well, my mother, Belva May Patricia Sawatzky, wasn't much of a dispenser of advice. I think probably because she would have said, better to just save your breath to cool your porridge. But we learned from her example. She was a real doer. She was fun. She was funny. She was hardworking, very curious, loved being with company, loved the arts. And so she really just did this. I think her wisdom would come through in her conversation, but it was just like in the moment, which I think is sort of kind of like me. I don't think I give advice. I hope I don't, because she's right. But I think when I think about my mom, I think that she was philosophically stoic. And I think that's because she was an orphan at a very young age. Her mom died of cancer, and her dad when she was 3, and her father killed himself when she was 6. And she told my sister, Trish, once that she said that she went through so many hard things as a young person that she felt that gave her confidence when she was older, that she had survived those things. And so maybe one of the things that she would say in terms of advice in these troubled times, in these tumultuous times, and also through what she had also lived and learned, is that this too shall pass.
This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and I'm very excited to hear what Lucy has to say about her mom.
Hi, I'm Lucy Cariou. I'm Sandra Sawatzky's daughter, and what I love the most about my mom is her sense of play. Like as a kid, she was always right there in there playing with me. I was an only child, and I never felt the need or like I missed out on having playmates because my mom was always right there and probably even more enthusiastically playing with than I was. And that continues on up until this day. Like we still play around, we still have dance parties, we still are really silly together. And I just love that because it's just really nice to have someone who you can be really fun with and like relaxed with, and it really lightens my mood. And I think it's good for me in my life.
That's lovely. I hadn't planned to ask a question, but I'm curious. You're a visual artist, and your mom is an artist. Did you get that from her?
I probably got that from her. Like one of our, the toys that I played with as a kid was her watercolor palettes from university that she no longer used. She would just let me, play around with those. So that probably gave me my, first intro to watercolor. But then I feel like as a teenager, I wasn't very artistic. And then as I was like approaching university, she was like, well, you could apply for art school. And that had never occurred to me. And I'd say our practices and processes are very different and our work is very different. But, I think we like to bounce ideas off of each other. We love talking about art. And I think that connection is probably where our art meets the most.
This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and this is the Mother's Day episode, very much a love letter to mothers and wise women and the power of women in the world. And also kind of a made-up episode this time. I don't have one guest per se. I wanted to share with you what I've learned about the history of Mother's Day. We'll hear more from friends and listeners of Secret Heart Broadcasting about their own mums, and maybe ask a few questions. What is it to be a mother? Who are we once our mothers are gone? And what does it mean to hold the power of the word mother? Because the world is in a state of imbalance right now, and this is not news to anyone. Perhaps by spending some time with the women in our own lives, whether they are mothers or not, or mother figures or not, perhaps we can just maybe find the glimmer of that first Mother's Day, this idea of bringing women together to talk about what is possible. Is it possible to end war? Is it possible to change how the world is thinking? Is it possible to move through life in a different way with grace and with peace and with the knowledge that, war is not the way, to quote Anna Jarvis and Mrs. Howe. Michelle Colleton is joining us today. Michelle, I'll maybe get you to just introduce you and tell me a bit about your mom and why you wanted to honor her on Mother's Day. And I actually have had the pleasure of meeting your mom. Michelle, you take it from here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, Carrie, you have met my mom during Colleton. So, yes, I thought about this for a bit. And one of the things I kind of picked up was a little note that my daughter wrote me when she was about grade 6. And she wrote this about like 25 reasons why I love my mom. And she wrote me this little note. And I was just going through it yesterday. And number one was she always loves me even when I've been bad. And then number 2 was she gives me hugs when I'm sad. And number 3, she calms me down when I'm mad. And number 4, she reads stories before bed. And number 5, she wants the best for me. And she gave me like 25 of these little reasons why she loves me. And it was like, you know what? Like, those are the same reasons that I love my mom. And I had to think about like, wow, she gave me the tools to be a great mom, and she was a great mom for me. So I was really kind of emotional about that. I was like, oh my God, isn't that cool? And I was just thinking, it is, as the mother, so is the daughter. So I just have this great legacy of like a superhero mom. And, she enabled me to do, not just raise my family, but she enabled me to have a career, and she enabled me to, I did a master's while I was having kids and working. And so if it wasn't for her, that master's degree belongs to her as much as it does to me.
This is the Secret Heart Broadcasting Mother's Day episode, and thank you so much for people who wanted to share stories about their mom and their relationship with their mom, whether she's living now or has passed, whether it was a great relationship or a challenging relationship. I feel really honored that you trust me with your stories, and it's been wonderful to hear from you, and I hope you feel the same way. This is from Brenda G in Edmonton, a wonderful artist and musician and communicator and connector. And she says this about her mom. My mom was a tall, willowy woman with a lovely lyrical laugh and a singing voice to match. She was an artist, homemaker, sassy, independent, a religious zealot, and a strict disciplinarian with a penchant for the wooden spoon. Was she perfect? No, but she tried. She tried really hard. As she was dying, one of the greatest gifts she gave me was a deeper perspective of the human soul, our essence. Her sister was visiting at the same time I was. I made the decision to always respect my mom and her wants during these final days. My mom's sister made the decision to treat her more like a toddler with the hope that she would hang on for a little bit longer. Both approaches to death are real and valid. I was feeding my mom canned clam chowder soup, her body already emaciated by her cancer. She indicated that she'd had enough, although she'd only just had one tiny spoonful. I respected her wishes. My aunt, on the other hand, said, "Come on, Bets, you need to eat more." Mum, who could barely speak at this time, eked out, "If you think it's so damn good, why don't you eat it yourself?" This shocked both my aunt and myself. I was so happy to see a glimpse of my mum. Her true essence and her agency was not fading the way her body was. And Brenda says, "Thank you, Mum, for always being you." This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and this is the Mother's Day episode. A rare appearance by a man on the show. Steve Mason, my longtime friend and technical producer of this podcast, has agreed to share a little bit about his mom.
Well, thanks, Carrie. I just want to say hi, Mom, because I know you're watching this special episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting for Mother's Day. There is a wooden spoon story in our family as well. So you had 5 hooligans to take care of in our house. And there was one day that Brother Rob crossed the line. And so out came the wooden spoon. But there were no tears that day, because when you smacked Rob with it, the wooden spoon split in 2. So we didn't know how you were going to react, but your reaction was not one of anger or frustration, but you chose to laugh. And so you taught us that humor is an effective way to relate to us kids. When my older brothers and my older sister were old enough to take care of my younger sister and me, well, you and Dad went out to discover a social life in square dancing. You became a very good dancer. You became a teacher, a mentor, and to dozens, maybe even hundreds of people. And that new freedom to not have to be with us 24/7 led to a more balanced life. And you went from being a very good mom to an even better mom, elite. And third thing is, they say it takes a village to raise a family. So when Laurel and I had our first child, we told you that she would have some pretty significant special needs. And you were there all these 26 years, giving of yourself and helping so much, and getting to know your granddaughter and eventually your grandson when he came along. And your closeness with them has brought us even closer. So just want to say I love you very much, Mom, and happy Mother's Day.
This next Mother's Day memory is from Dawn Hart, who was a guest on the podcast on season 1. She'll be back again this season. She's not able to read this in person, so she's asked me to read this to her mom. Dear Mom, your unwavering love and guidance have truly shaped me into who I am today. You exemplify resilience through your strength and kindness, teaching me how to rise after every fall and inspiring me to uplift others as you have uplifted me. Your faith in me has been my greatest encouragement, lifting me in even the toughest times. I am eternally grateful to you for your support and feel blessed to pass on all you've taught me to my children. That's from Dawn Hart to her mom. This is the Mother's Day episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting. We've been hearing a lot about the history of Mother's Day from listeners and friends of Secret Heart about their own mums. I've kind of been freestyling a bit about what it's meant for me to be a mum, what it's meant for me to have a mum, and now what it's like to get older and be a wise woman in the world. So I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing, and if you are, please let us know. This just in, mothers aren't perfect. Mothers aren't fathers. Mothers carry us to term, they feed and nurture us and keep us safe despite the chaos that's happening outside of that first home. They bring us into the real world, and they are really our first teachers. So let me share with you this: Mary, Annie, Sophie, Carrie, Annabelle. That is as far back and as far forward as I can go down my matrilineal line. I know there are thousands of women who came before, and hopefully thousands of women who will come after. And I hope that every generation is learning more and loving better than the last. So whether your own mother is living or she's departed, whether you had a great relationship or it was a challenging one, or still in flux and still healing and still nurturing, there is no getting around the fact that we all have a mother root. We all come from mothers. And I'm really curious about who we are once they're gone. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny, and I'm so pleased that Liz Soria, our guest from season 1, is here to share a bit about her mother. Over to you, Liz.
Hi, Carrie. Well, I think the things that my mother taught me when I reflect on it are not so much things she actively tried to teach me, but were things that she just demonstrated out of who she was. And so I think the things I wanted to highlight, and they go well with my little photo of me and her when we were both younger, and I was a proper little lady at the age of, 2, is she always had a love of the outdoors and wanted always to be in nature. And it's not that I then always had to follow her outdoors, but I realize now that it was a model for that desire to be out in nature. And coupled with that, and I should tell you a side story that goes with that actually, because to the point where she had to have her cup of tea outdoors every morning, even in winter. So in the wintertime, she would go bundled up out on the deck and she would sit there. She'd have her, her house coat on and then a winter coat on, and she would sit on the deck to have her tea even in the depths of winter. So it was so important to her to be outside. And I guess coupled with that, the other piece that she modeled is a curiosity about everything. And, when you go outside and in nature and hear birds and animals, there's so many questions that you can keep asking. And she was always asking those questions. Why is this happening? Why is this bird here? Why, and we never, it's not that she had answers for those things, but I think just to have the curiosity. And those things have definitely seeped under my skin and served me well in the life that I lead now.
Well, I guess we'll let you go outside and have your tea.
Yeah, exactly. Have tea, we'll travel.
This is Secret Heart Broadcasting, the Mother's Day episode, and I'm exploring that idea of what is a mother. And I'd like to present my friend Lisa as an example. She has no biological children of her own, but she is constantly creating these wonderful pieces of art and film and bringing those into the world. And I'd love to share a short film that we worked on together. Lisa had created one of her famous bear sculptures with her husband, Mr. Ferguson, of Mr. and Mrs. Ferguson Art. This sculpture was called Ursa Mater, the mother bear. And Lisa asked me to write a script for it and record it. So, in the spirit of mothers, I'd like to share with you Ursa Mater. There is an ancient root, dark and eternal, infinite and endless, pressing through the hard earth of ages. An unbroken line, at once tracing the way back and marking the way forward. Age upon age, generation after generation, mothers and daughters. Mothers and sons, too. Mothers and children. We all come from mothers, in all ways, always. Yet mothers, like children, are born. Transformation comes slowly, Then suddenly, painfully, permanently, there is no going back. Where once there was selfishness, we now cradle impossible responsibility. A new self outside ourselves. Without us, they would not survive. The sun shouts for courage, while the moon whispers secrets, waxing and waning, a wise lullaby. Instinct startles us, this combustible love, tender to fierce in an angry flash. Mama bear fury, once ignited, extends a perimeter of heat, a golden circle of light. Love unleashed, the ancient spell for protection. We burn. Time passes. Those we cared for now care for us. One generation growing the next, keepers of wisdom, beloved, unloved. Into the world and eventually out of it, a line spooling back to the beginnings of time. Mothers and daughters, life and love, and life again. A natural and eternal cadence, end over endless over time. The wheel ceaseless turning, child to adult, mother to elder, elder to ancestor. And so it begins. And Lisa Fryklund, a guest from season 1, is here to talk about her mom. Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your mom meant to you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm very happy to talk about my mother, Donna. I would like to say that she was a friend in my life, but I think probably she arches a little higher than that because she was also guidance for me. She always knew how to level me out with my sideways thinking or my hopes that were a little expanded, where I'd say, I'd like to buy this Volkswagen GTI Rabbit. That'd be cool. And she'd level out and go, okay, well, you can buy that, but we're not going to co-sign a loan for a sports car for you. And have you considered insurance? And I go, oh, yeah, that's the practical side, isn't it? So every time when I do things like that may be excessive or just any venture, I try to put her voice is often in my head anyways, but it goes in my head going, have you thought about? And oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. So I always carry her with me all the time in my head. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about her in some respect, even in small words that she had. I try to use them just as a reminder of who she is, and even my grandmother for that matter. For instance, my mother would emphasize something by saying, honestly. And I would just say, I really mean it. Honestly, we have to do the laundry today. Honestly, we have to go get some milk. So I love those little things that she gave me and that I carry with me every day. And I miss her dearly because I lost her when I was 27 years old. So it's nice to have her with me.
It's really close to my heart, Mother's Day. I think it is the absolute epicenter of honoring our ancestors, regardless of your relationship with your mother. My own mother and I deepened our relationship, certainly since the birth of my daughter. And that was a real gift to me. So as a child growing up, my mother was a lot of things. She also held the family together and made a lot of simple, inexpensive food made with love. She was very kind. Her cooking was very precise. Again, the secret ingredient was love. She had a patience about her that I do not have. I did not inherit that. So my own cooking style is much more slapdash and winging it. Actually, my whole lifestyle is sort of like that. And I wrote a lot of poetry, around the time of my mom's decline and dying. And I learned a lot from Lorna Crozier, my teacher, and just such a wise and generous poet, a Canadian gem. If you have not read Lorna Crozier, please do. So yes, to the women poets who kind of helped me find the confidence to write. This is after the style of a British poet, Kristen Luckens, who writes beautifully about grief. Maybe one day I'll meet her. Maybe one day she'll be on the show. Anyway, I want to share a poem. This is called Stirring, after Kirsten Luckens. That must be the spark that once was my mother, whispers butter, then onion, no garlic. Curious, there was always garlic. Slice celery, dice carrots, pluck tomatoes from south-facing ledges, overripe to bursting, or hard, mean, and green. All of them I roughly chop in the way she did not, my thudding counterpoint to her exacting cubes, unparalleled squares, a precision I cannot match. I am angry, impatient, just as she said. I am that daughter lacking patience, daughter mourning mother, daughter adding salt and pepper to a pot, taught to stir by her, daughter falling short, craving sin, a cigarette, a shot of gin. Outside, the clouds are high and scant, a promise of heat that must be swallowed for life to keep on. And I'm happy to say that poem was published by Pinhole Poetry, and you can find that online at Pinhole Poetry. And more to come. And this is the freestyling Mother's Day episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Carrie Penny. In addition to hearing more about people's own experience with their mothers or what mothering means to them, I'm walking through some moments in my own life as a mother, as a daughter, and now my mother as ancestor. And I wanted to talk about the transition and the important ritual around a funeral. Now, I know that's going to be different for different people. Some people say they don't want a funeral or a celebration of life. I really strongly believe that that is a celebration for the people who are left on earth to come together and grieve. So I know it's difficult. You don't want to go against anyone's wishes. Hopefully you've had some conversations before they've gone, but especially the loss of a mother. And I would say no matter what your relationship with your mother, there's something profound about that. That is the mother root. I've heard it described as blood root. It's the mother love. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what we did. So first of all, my mom and I had plenty of time to work on her obituary, which at the time I was thinking of as an autobiography. I had created a video for her 87th birthday. And then we just continued to add on that. And that later became her memorial video, which was maybe morbid, but it really did outline her life. So we had that done. We had her official obituary, which saved so much squabbling with my siblings, because you're at a time in this moment when you've all lost your mother and people are going to react in different ways. So check, we had that. We had also agreed about some kind of print takeaway for the celebration of life. And I had always had this dream about making something that could fit into a number 10 envelope. So this could be mailed out. This could be folded out. And this, a little recipe of her favorite rhubarb marmalade, is actually a perforation. So you can rip that off and people could save it. Because sometimes I know it's hard. You end up with these cards from people's celebrations and you don't know what to do with them. So that was our thinking there. And I'm so lucky to have so many creative people in my life. So my dear friend Doug Hironaka, basically laid this out. All the siblings had a say and approved it. And so we have my mom's kind of catchphrase, which I think is lifted from the 1980s, Bloom Where You're Planted. There's her obituary, which appeared in the paper. I'm still here. Her rhubarb marmalade recipe, which again on the back is a tear off. That's a little what's going to happen at the ceremony, which we decided in the days following her death. And we all easily agreed on a photo. And there's 3 photos of my mom in here. So that's what I would say. It's like find a young one. There's a medium one. And then there's an older one. I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of showing you that. But that was a print piece we did for her funeral that we called her Funeral Tea. She was actually in a play called The Funeral Tea. So that's what we handed out to people. Another thing, I don't know if you've listened to the episode with Janine Violini. She talks a lot about preparing for death and ritual. And one thing she says she wishes she would have done for her mom, who was a great gardener, was to hand out tomato seedlings. So with that bit of knowledge, like what would be something personal of my mom's that we could gift people who attended the funeral, a tea? She had a beautiful collection of leather-bound classic books, and there was over 100. And we put those in a box, and that was something that we let people choose when they left the event. And that felt really true because, there's just so many things to be dealt with when someone you love dies, and it's a difficult time. So I would say out of this time, the funeral tea for my mom, our family came together. We had an approved autobiography, which was the obituary. We knew that we were going to put that in the paper despite the cost, because that was an important consideration for my mom. And that's how old people get their news still, right? So, of course, there was an online piece. We came together as a family to talk about what that funeral tea might look like. And that was very much a family event. We put the word out there. We hired a caterer, and we held it at her senior center. So, which she was insistent about. My mom had a lot of opinions about what she wanted to happen, and it felt like to go against those would be, you're asking for a haunting. So anyway, we'll show a little bit maybe of the funeral tea. I was just so grateful that my siblings and my husband and my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law all agreed to sing this song. At the time, during my mom's kind of time in hospice, I spent many hours with her, and music was a big part of her life. And I'd picked up the ukulele and learned a few songs, and I sang to her a lot. And that in that hospice environment with the lower lighting and no overhead call bells and dinging and paging, and photos of her family around her, it just helped to really create a soft, loving environment for this enormously important transition that, no matter how prepared you think you are for it, you are never prepared for it. So I was able to provide some music and calm, which I think helped her, or who knows, maybe she was like rolling her eyes inside, but I don't think so. And it certainly calmed me. And, that was a really enormously important, peaceful, holy time, the transition between living and dying. And again, I was so grateful that when that moment actually came, and it was a long time coming, that my brother and sister-in-law were in the room, and my younger sister was also there via the phone, and we could just bear witness and let my mom know that it was okay to go. And she was always good with that anyway. She was such a wise soul. Anyway, that's a little bit about what we did to honor my mom in a way that felt true to her. And no matter where you are in your life journey or your relationship with your mom, it's just good to keep these kind of conversations in mind. It's, there's a real opening of the heart. Birth and death, I think, bring this kind of tremendous opening and tenderness, and to actually live in that for the moment and, be part of that journey was a tremendous gift to me. And again, I'm so grateful that my siblings agreed to help me sing this song. That we're not a musician family. We played this at my mom's funeral tea, and to all the people that were there to bear witness and also share our love and loss for Mom. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting, the Mother's Day episode, and it has felt a little bit like this is a love letter to my mom and to all mothers, and I would say to all women. And one thing I wanted to mention was that I have a daughter, Annabelle, who is the absolute joy of my life. I am a much better person because of her. I taught her things. She teaches me things. And she's also been such a gift to the other women in my life, the grandmas. And I know as she grows older, she will be a wonderful, wise woman in the world. So I'm so grateful to my daughter, Annabelle, and a little shout out this Mother's Day from your mom. I'm working on a manuscript that honors my mother and also lets me think about what is it to get older in the world, to have purpose in your life, to share what you know, to surround yourself with people of like vibration. I think it's really important in the world right now to get it right inside, to know who you are and what you stand for, to, remember what you love, to be grateful. Yeah. And to take chances. So if you have a book in you, write it. If you have a song in you, sing it. There's just no sense in keeping it inside now. So here we are at the end of this episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting, the Mother's Day episode. A different way of doing this podcast for me, very much a love letter to my mother, my daughter, my grandmother, mothers, wise women, just an opportunity to reflect, how did we get here and what is the power of the feminine in the world? I'm so curious about that. And maybe you are too. Maybe that's why you're here. So wherever you are in the world, whatever your relationship with your mother, whether she's here on earth or not on earth, whether you had a great relationship or it was challenging. And honestly, what real relationship isn't challenging at times? But I hope you just take a moment this month, May, and maybe this Mother's Day, traditionally here now, the second Sunday of May, to take a minute and think about this day that, was conceived in modern times as a rallying cry for women to come together, unifying globally to try and put an end to war. And then later became a very thoughtful, loving holiday, a grieving daughter mourning her activist mother and wanting to celebrate the work that women do, the quiet, often unpaid work that women do in the world today. It was true in the 1870s. It's still true today. So take a moment for Mother's Day. And I do want to say that being a mother has just taught me that mothers aren't just teaching, mothers are learning from their children as well. This is 100% a two-way street. We've heard that for some of our guests that have shared about their mothers. So however you approach this May, this Mother's Day, if you have a mother here, if you know a wise woman or a sister or some woman in your life who means something, take a moment and say, I love you, and maybe find out a bit about them. Find out what's possible. Maybe if we meet together in this heart space, and I think about maybe that's why Secret Heart Broadcasting is here. I often say I'm just following operating instructions. But if we can come together in a way that honors women's wisdom in a loving space full of grace, I don't know. Who knows what's possible? Thank you for listening and happy Mother's Day. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please tell your friends.